Good morning, this is Phil Thomas, New Era Systems. You're looking at an Advantech 50 watt KU-Band BUC. But this video isn't really about the Advantech, it's about that little box on top that is a serial to Ethernet connector. Now this came about because a client who bought 4 of these 50 watt BUCs said, but there is no Ethernet connection and they're going to go into remote places, so I need a way to control them remotely, just using a browser. So this is where we went out and we purchased this little box. Let me grab it. Made by a group of people in China, not expensive, I think less than $50 if I recall correctly. As long as the device, in this case the Advantech, has a serial port, it can connect into this. On the other side of it, there is an RJ45 to connect to your Ethernet hub. But before we can start using this, we have to know a little bit about the serial interface on this Advantech. So to begin, we're not going to connect to this serial to Ethernet interface. We're just going to connect directly into the serial port of the computer. Well, sadly, computers don't have serial ports anymore, but as you can see where it says RS-232, it's connected into a USB adapter. So this is what we're going to do. We're just going to connect first to the computer, look at it with a program called Terraterm, then we can decide what the serial characteristics of this amplifier are. So now I'm going to go ahead and get it set up. Okay, I've connected the output of the amplifier to this computer. And even though I said that I was going to use Terraterm, there isn't Terraterm on this machine, so rather than go through that hassle, I just said, okay, I'm going to pull up PuTTY again. So here we are. The settings have already been set in. I'm going to say load the serial port, COM3, which is correct for this machine. And I'm going to say open. And now we're connected directly to the amplifier. First thing, P2. Oh. So now we have the direct connection to the amplifier through the computer serial port. This was necessary because there was no guarantee that this particular device had a good serial port or it had been set up correctly through PuTTY. And so it's just a precursor. Check this, make sure that we do have a good connection, and then we'll continue the test using Ethernet connection rather than the serial port on this computer. I've made a couple of changes. The RS-232 has been taken away from the computer, it's been plugged into here. This little guy is powered up, and there is a direct connection to my Ethernet hub. I'm not going to say this is all there is to do because there's a small procedure that you have to go to first to set up this box onto your local network so that we know how to access it using the browser. We also have to tell it what's coming in over the serial port. This is why I needed to go to the serial port first and find out that the setup was 19.2, 8-on-1, in fact, standard. The only surprise was that it wasn't 9600, it was a 19.2. And I'm sure this amplifier will accommodate a range of different data rates, but 19.2 will work fine. Now what else are we going to do before we get this running? We have a power meter, because in a few minutes we're going to set this up and we're going to control it remotely. But of course it's got to have some input. The input for the amplifier is going to come from one of these modems. We might as well use the 570L. This one incidentally does have a 24 volt DC power supply for an amplifier, but We don't care in this case because this amplifier is AC powered, and so there's no problem there. Okay, I'll go ahead and get that set up and set it up to the input that Advantech recommend. It's quite high, it's a surprise. Don't exceed 0 dBm. Typically you would run it around neg 10 dBm for this amplifier. So that's what we're going to do in a couple of minutes. Now, in order to prove that the device, the Ethernet device, works over the web, I'm going to put some drive into this amplifier. I'm going to use the CDM570L modem, and we're going to look at the on-off. It is already turned on. Going to look at the power setting. Power setting is neg 13, which is about where Advantech say should be about right. And finally, we just look at frequency because we have to make sure it's pushing out 13750 in the KU band. Okay, so now what I've done, I've also set up a power meter. Now that I make changes using PuTTY connected directly to the amplifier, you'll be able to verify that it is actually making the changes that I request. Okay, back to PuTTY. Profile setup, load it. That's the IP address and the port that it's set up on. And I'm just going to say open. And now we're up with PuTTY in operation. First thing I have to do is say T2. Try and type correctly, T2. Verifies now that it is connected to a computer, not to a handheld device. Let's look at the various screens that are available. Status, RF. I want first to look at RF, because RF is off. So now we're going to set RF on. So now I've told the amplifier to start transmitting, and I can look at the power meter and see that it jumped up to 32 dBm, which is about 1 watt. Gradually increase the power on the modem. So I'm going to say gain. Gain has the possible settings for this amplifier is between 47 dBm and 68 dBm. And so I'm going to set it up to 50 dBm. Now I'm going to look at what the link says. Okay, saying it's got 34 dBm forward power here. This is the area that I'm looking at, forward power. So now I'm going to go back to gain again. And I'm going to take it up to 55. And I'm going to look at status once more as soon as it does it. Now what have we got? We've got 37 dBm. So 37 dBm in watts is about 5 watts. So we're still low. So we're going to go up to 65. Don't forget, I can go all the way up to 68. Again, let's just see what we've got as far as PuTTY is concerned. We've got up to 43.1 now. So 43 would be 19 watts. Okay, I'm just going to take it up once more because the goal is not to test the amplifier, the goal is to check the control mechanism, and the control mechanism is Ethernet to serial. So I'm going to go to gain, 67. I'm going to look at the status again to see what it thinks the output is. And it says it's 44.4 in watts. It's 27. So they're pushing it just a little bit over what Advantech recommend. It won't do any harm. And so 27, 44.4 shown on the Ethernet link. The actual shown on the power meter is 44.55. They're pretty well in step. They're never exactly the same, but that's perfectly okay. We expect that. All right, so now, next thing I'm going to do is turn the power on, check the status once more, just for verification. And what does it say? It says forward power is less than 26 dBm. In other words, it's not picking up any forward power. Temperatures, well, within the normal range. Does not have one-for-one redundancy. They're pretty well done. We've proved by looking at the power meter and looking at the input from PuTTY that we are able to control this block using a remote connection. And that was the goal. So we're done. And I appreciate your time watching. Hope it was useful. See you on the next video.